So, I think we are about to start. So, those of you who haven't noticed, we slightly changed the program. So the first talk will be about squeezing attack traces for about half an hour, I think. And then it's, thanks for the back trace then. And then it's followed by the one that was originally scheduled for now, hacking into botnet, exactly into the Storm botnet. For me, this is kind of an unknown territory, so I don't know if I've any active experience with a Storm bot or any bot, but yesterday I heard about a Chinese bot on a stick, and now I don't know really if I had some passive experience with a Storm bot or anything like that. I hope you guys will tell me something about taking bots apart, looking at what makes them tick, and I'm really interested in knowing more about that. Hopefully, as you all are, and that's for you. For a warm welcome, please give a hand.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Does this work? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, this is Markus, and my name is Tillmann. We will be giving you a quick introduction to what you can do with honeypot data. So our first question is, who of you is not aware of what a honeypot is? Yeah, okay. For you, sir, you can think of a honeypot as a sensor, some kind of sensor, which basically has its value in being attacked. So it's a box or a resource on the internet, probably, and it's waiting for being attacked. And if it gets hit, then the goal is, or its task is, to record as many information about an ongoing attack as possible. And then you can take these information and try to, mine it or do funny things with it. And this is what our talk is about. So after having fixed the Xorg stuff, we can start with our first slide. First of all, we need an environment. So like a monitoring setup which allows us to record the data. And what we want to do is we want to squeeze attack traces. So we want to get as much information out of them as possible. So first question, which is an appropriate operating system? We thought, okay, we are Unix gurus. We like to use Linux, but there's a slight problem, because if you use Linux, there's hardly any attacks, or only a few attacks, like those plain SSH, password brute forces and stuff. But if you use Linux, you are not really vulnerable to the big majority of attacks which is going on the internet. So if you choose Linux, your life is kind of boring. Nobody's hacking your box. And we thought about how can we fix that. And our approach is... The approach is attacks are happening all the time. So if you link a box to the internet and sniff the network or something, then you see ongoing attacks all the time. But these attacks target Windows operating systems. So we thought, okay, let's fix Linux in a way that Windows exploits can harm it. And yeah, as you can read here, the solution is to turn Linux in a system vulnerable to those. And if we succeed, our box will finally be being able to get hacked, yeah. Okay, so let's assume we have a Linux operating system which is vulnerable to Windows exploits. The next question is, how can we attract the bad guys? So basically you. Yeah, we can give a talk here, publish IP addresses or something, and hope that you will probe these afterwards. But this is not even necessary, because as I said before, attacks are ongoing all the time. We can just link our box to the internet and wait. And from our viewpoint, an attack begins with a connection, of course, in a network. It's not a connection in the sense of TCP, where you have a full duplex stream-oriented connection. We also understand a UDP session as a connection. So that's our understanding of a connection. And a connection basically transports malicious data. Okay, the first goal for us is to trap these connections, so to make them actually make them being established, and then to record the data which is transmitted over this connection, and afterwards we can squeeze that. Luckily, there's a little tool called Honeytrap, which was implemented as a low interactive honeypot, which also already provides us with this functionality. It can bind to UDP and TCP ports dynamically, so you can imagine of like a sensor which sits on the internet and behaves passively, so no ports are bound, no services are started, and once you connect to it, it dynamically opens up the port and handles the connection or serves you with some data. And this is a nice thing, but there's a slight problem, because if you connect to a port, you certainly want to speak a specific protocol. And if you use this approach of dynamic listeners, as we call it, you have no protocol behind it. And even if you would put, let's say, for instance, HTTP or something behind it, it would be kind of limited, because if you connect to my Honeytrap sensor and want to speak SMTP or something, it must react in the way you intend. So our question is, how can we deal with that without implementing hundreds or thousands of protocols? We need a generic way to do that. So as you can read here, handle connections in a generic fashion. The answer to this is the mirror mode. The mirror mode, let me check, do I have a picture here? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a picture is nice. Okay, we have, on the left, we have our technically interested person, TIP. The technically interested person connects to our honeypot. Here you see a SYN segment. And in our setup, the SYN segment gets freezed by Honeytrap. So Honeytrap tells the kernel, freeze this SYN segment, I will come back to you later. After that, you have time to fire up a server on that port. So you call a socket, listen, bind, listen, and so on. And then you can unfreeze the SYN segment. So you have started a dynamic server which can then handle the connection. Okay. The fourth step is to mirror the connection, to proxy the connection back to the initiator. So if he sends some data to me, I send it back to him on the same port. So I connect to him on the same port, and I mirror data to him that he sends me to him, and vice versa. So he's basically hacking his own box, if this works. And it works in most of the cases, because this is one of the impressive outcomes. We didn't think that it would work that well, but it actually does, because the situation on the internet, at least it is our explanation, that the situation on the internet is like this. Someone is probing your box, mostly infected by some bot or automatic exploitation toolkit, and he was probably owned before himself. So he's vulnerable to the same exploit, and if we mirror the connection back to him, we get a valid exploit trace or intrusion trace. And let me check, do we have our first demo here? Yes. Okay. Tip fail. I have something which I recorded about a year ago, so thank you, which is the old SSL2 open exploit. For those of you who remember that one, it was published in 2002 as a heap overflow exploit, published by Solar, what was his name? Solar Eclipse, I think. This is the buffer filling stuff or something, I don't know. And the interesting part is at the bottom. Okay, you see here, at the very top, he starts with the term, export, blah, 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 exec bash. And the next line is interesting as well. Uname A, ID, W, and so on. So who's actually currently logged in? Am I the only intruder here and stuff? And most importantly, he sets colors, Alice. He sets, to have colorful output. Okay. And I guess this is part of the automatic exploitation thing. And after that, the fun begins. He CDs to var cache mod SSL, ls, cd choice, low. He doesn't even recognize that it's his own directory tree he's browsing here. Then he wgets netracing.com from netracing.com call tarball, extracts it, and so on, executes loginx,sus to root, unset his file, plain old hacker stuff, you know, ID and so on, and then he then he extracts its sbin tarball, bin tarball, and so on, and installs this on his own box. So after that he's rootkitted, and yeah. I don't know if this guy found out actually, because I mean, you know, a rootkit hides the traces, and yeah. Another interesting thing is that we get the rootkits for free here. We can also wget the tarballs and get rootkits for free. Actually, the whole scheme here is a nice thing for collecting exploits, because you don't have to write your own exploits. You basically sit on the internet and wait for the exploits to come into your honeypot, and then you can take them and reuse them. Okay, back to the slides. Yeah, the backgrounds and benefits. Why does it work so nicely? As I said before, the tips are most likely to be vulnerable to the same exploit themselves. And as we do not require any knowledge about the protocol or the service being exploited, it's also suited for novel stuff, so for zero-day exploits and stuff. Yeah, and the advantages from the tip viewpoint are the thing is completely passive. There's no scanning required, so this is not the tip as before, it's us as a tip. From our viewpoint, the exploit collectors, we don't need to scan the internet, we just can sit there and wait for the exploits to arrive. We get boxes for free, you know, like the rootkitted box from the guy before. We get exploits for free, we get malware for free, so yeah. Okay, back to our topic. What can you now do with the exploit traces? You want to squeeze it, we want to get information out of it. One thing we recently developed is you can actually generate an intrusion detection signature from the exploit traces. And you can do that fully automated, in a fully automated manner. So the first step is our sensors, our honey trap sensors collect attack traces. The next step, I'll only provide a brief sketch here. If you are interested in this particular thing, you should talk to me afterwards. The next step would be to automatically cluster or classify the inputs. So you group together the RPC-DCOM exploits, the MySQL password brute forces and stuff. Yeah, because you want, of course, you want one signature for the RPC-DCOM, one for the LSAS exploit, and so on. So step 2 is a classification step. Step 3 is to identify invariant parts in a cluster. So this is the invariant parts are these parts, the parts who are suited for a signature, because they describe a cluster, and you can take these as a pattern. You can construct a signature from these and publish them in a usable format, which is actually a snort rule. I was planning to give a short demo here. Marcus, if you could take the microphone for a second. We recorded some exploit traces against port 8800 TCP this summer, and nobody was able to tell what was behind that. So the vulnerability was unknown, the exploit itself was unknown, so nobody knew what was going on there. And we didn't only see the scanning, but we also recorded some exploit traces. These are 20 traces, about 20 traces, and we will now try to generate a snort signature from these.
We tried before, so it works.
Okay, this is how these exploit traces look like. This is actually what Honeytrap dumped into a file from a session. It's obviously an HTTP GET request, which has 2 parameters or 2 arguments, a user agent parameter and an authorization basic thing. The authorization basic is rather boring because it's a constantly repeating pattern, if you can see that. And the user agent is interesting. It starts with some ASCII crap and then some binary bytes, which looks, if you are familiar with that, like ASCII encoded shellcode or an exploit.